Welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam Smith, and today we continue our adventure in the Elder Scrolls Betrayal: The Second Era from Chip Theory Games. If you haven't checked out the prior videos leading up to this one, I definitely recommend you do so you can understand exactly how we got to where we're at. I'll have a link in the top right hand corner right now so you can check out those videos to get caught up to this current state. We are at the very end of day number 7, about to transition into day number 8 of our journey through the Black Marsh. My aim here as a party, we're halfway towards the Stormhold objective marker, way up at the very top of the map. Our party resides here. Our marker we're trying to aim for is way up there, and there's another one in play as well that we could potentially go after if we want, off to the east. Now, there is one thing I do want to mention that was caught in the prior video that is actually really beneficial to know when you're going in at the apprentice level difficulty. Now, as many of you know by this point, as you get to the end of a given day, you have the ability to do an adventurer's rest. When you have the apprentice difficulty as your chosen difficulty for your game, you're able to replenish up to 2 HP to your character to their maximum at the most, but you also get to remove 2 dice from your cooldown track. Now, how I've been removing the dice out of the track is I've actually been removing them as if I'm doing it like a cooldown stat removal, where you take it from the left side of the track, but I was advised that you could actually take any 2 dice. So you're always able to take 2 when you're on the apprentice level difficulty, and you could take it from anywhere, which means you can focus on specific dice you want to get out of your track, like maybe over fatigue, or you could actually choose to get some dice back into your player mat that you plan to use in a future way. No matter what difficulty level you're playing on, make sure you read those difficulty tweaks inside of the rulebooks, you understand them and apply them as you go along. Now, for me, it didn't have any gameplay impact on me whatsoever. I was still following the correct rules, taking 2 dice out of the cooldown track for every adventurer rest. I just didn't give myself the freedom to choose any 2 dice from my cooldown track. So going forward, I now know I have that ability, which is pretty awesome. We are now heading into day number 8. And we have until day number 12 to complete our guild quest. Let's now move into the Overland phase. So we start this phase with a base movement due to it being rainy of 2 for the party. Now, before my party moves, I do want to mention something that is in the back of my mind, and that is the Argonian's crazy cooldown track full of dice. As you saw just earlier in the video, there's a lot of dice in there, but there is a class ability in the Sorcerer class that my Dark Elf has, and thanks to the crazy amount of tenacity that I have, I could, at this point, even right now, it doesn't have to be inside of combat only, you can trigger this class ability outside of combat as well. I could do a power surge, basically paying 1 tenacity to do it, and then for every other amount I spend after that, I can remove a single die from the cooldown track of the Argonian, starting from the left side and going to the right, which means I could clear out 4 dice. So I'm keeping that option in my back pocket in case I need to make use of it, but for now we'll go ahead and travel on the Overland map and see what we run into first. So with 2 base movement, as we know, on a rainy day, I can go to a couple different spots here as we head north. I could potentially head up here to the unstable location. I could go to a peaceful encounter here. I could completely skirt around these if I don't even want to deal with them and actually land and end off in a space that has no icon whatsoever if I don't want to deal with any encounter. And we also don't have to travel directly north either. We're not in a rush right now. We could easily arc around here and hit one of the towns as we go up, but for the purposes of progressing forward and trying to get there by the 12th day, let's make headway north for now. So we're going to head 2 spaces to that peaceful encounter. It's time to find out what kind of peaceful encounter we've run into. The card is called Future Imperfect, and it states, a stale odor wafts from the roadside stall of an elderly Imperial with a matted beard and bloodshot eyes. Big things await you, he calls out, beckoning you over with a knobby wave. Toss an old man a coin and learn what the future holds. Your first instinct is to politely dismiss this old huckster, but then a glint behind the counter catches your eye. A remarkably fat sack of gold tucked away at the man's feet. Clearly the locals put a lot of trust in the fortune teller. Maybe you should too. Both options we have to choose between are peaceful, and there's an XP for whichever one we choose. The first one states, ask about what you can expect on the road ahead. You can look at the top 3 cards of one of the Overland decks, so that would be either the Peaceful Encounter deck or the Conflict deck, and that's beneficial either way because you can see what's coming up and rearrange them in any order of your choosing. Very nice. The second one says, ask about the character of those you'll meet along your path. You get to draw 2 enemies from the level 1-5 enemy bag and place them both on this card. You select one to be level 1, one to be level 5, and the cool thing about this, looking at this persistent thing, it says during your next non-quest battle, if an enemy shares a skill with an enemy on this card, that skill is ignored, which is very thematic. So you're almost being told by somebody here, the fortune teller is telling you that you have enemies coming at you with certain skills sets that are going to cause you problems, but because you're aware of them, they're no longer going to cause you issue in the next upcoming battle. So that one's pretty cool because after you're done with it, you discard the card back and return the two enemies back to their bag. They're simply just really there for reference of what skills you get to negate from the enemies you run into in your non-quest battle. Now, both of these are really, really tempting. No matter which way I go, they're both interesting. But the top one, I think, to me, is the most beneficial because I can really get into the conflict encounter deck. So when I get into a conflict, I can make sure it's one that I think I have a better chance of succeeding at. So we're going to go for that red deck. We're going to draw the top 3 cards, take a look at them, and put them back in any order we want on the top. Here's an up-close look at the top 3 Overland conflict cards, and I get to place these back in any order I want on the very top. I'll show you the front and back of each of them, and you can pause the screen if you want to read the narrative text, and I'll have to be choosing these myself, as I'm not going to be able to ask you guys, unfortunately, as this is a recorded video. So this one here, we can read the front here, pause if you wish. Flipping over to the opposite side, this is going to say, a simple look won't hurt, and it has us going into a battle objective of conquer for this one. The next one is Origin of the Species. This one says the battle objective is going to be special. And after that, we got Captured. That certainly doesn't sound good. And that one is going to have us doing a battle objective of Conquer. I've chosen to place them in this order from top to bottom. They'll be placed in the very top of the Overland conflict deck. That's going to do it for the encounter phase. We now move to the rewards phase where we gain 1 XP for each of our characters, bringing both of them from the 2 XP they're carrying up to their maximum on their mats of 3, which is great. And the party dial is going to increase from where it sits at 14 to 15. Both mats and the dial are being updated right now. We made it to the end of day phase for day number 8, so we simply take a look at the peaceful encounter we did resolve. That's the card we'll look on the back of to find out what's happening with the weather going into the next day, which you can see right here is going to be rainy. So weather-wise, things are going to stay the same. It's raining the Black Marsh, not surprising. Now we're inside the Adventurer's Rest, which we know we can go ahead in the Apprentice difficulty and remove any 2 dice from the cooldown track, but I'm also forcefully trying to get to an inn so I can completely clear the entire cooldown track of everything going on in there because as of right now, it's pretty clogged up. Now I could use the Tenacity for my Dark Elf to clear out the left to right first 4. But again, if I can just get to an inn and take an action there, I can have all this dealt with in one shot, and then I don't have to burn all my tenacity with my Dark Elf, which I could use during combat in the future. So want to be wise about this. Now, right now, we'll just go ahead and select 2 dice. I'm going to choose to bring back the one hand and shield dice so I have something if we run into a situation with combat. Going into this Adventurer's Rest, I get the benefit of an additional HP for my Dark Elf because my maximums have increased. So I got 4, 1, and 1, so a total of 6. I currently have 5 under the chip, so we're jumping up by 1. And also I can choose again 2 dice from the cooldown track. I'm definitely getting rid of this Fear status die, and we'll bring back one of these blue dies here to go into this skill. Now, for those that might not know what the Fear status is all about, when it's in your cooldown track, it affects the unit's non-combat skills. They're ignored. The effect does not apply to skill dice already in active slots or the cooldown track, so it's not something you really want to see and have sticking around for too long. And that's going to complete day number 8. We're moving into day 9. As I mentioned, one of the focuses for this day is to try to get to a town that has an open inn. Now, the fun part is we have the 9th day, 10th, 11th, and 12th to move across the Overland map. So we have 4 full days here of movement to get up to that Stormhold location where the guild quest is to try and attempt it in order to win the session. But here's the fun part. I do want to clear out my cooldown tracks. As I mentioned, I want to get to an inn that is open. Unfortunately, the one that's actually closest to me, this city right here, does not have an open inn. Gideon does have an open inn, and this one over here, Cormont, does have an open inn. So I have 2 that do, but here's the fun part. It's quite a bit of movement to get there. And the thing to remember around baseline movement on a given day, again, it's based on the weather gauge, but you can only increase it by taking fatigue on each party member by the same amount as your base movement. So if I have 2 as a base movement, at maximum, I can push my party 2 more. Each of them would take 2 light fatigue to do so, but I could go 4 today. So that, in fact, would get me to Gideon, which is right here, so I absolutely could pull that off if I want to, but then the fun part is I'm kind of actually moving further away from where Stormhold is, making getting back to Stormhold a much bigger trek. It'd be 3 days to try and get back there, and I certainly would be trying to take some fatigue along the way to push because my movement likely would not be enough to get back up there. Now, the other thing, too, is, and again, this all goes back to me kind of beelining it up this way. I could have actually arced over and around, but I chose to kind of go up through here, and now I have a little bit of regret on that. But the other option here is to just move forward and kind of head towards this one here, but you'll see forward movement won't get me all the way to the city during this day. I've decided to get myself closer to the main objective to keep myself within the vicinity to be able to get over there when I need to. Also, the space that I'm currently on after forward movement is blank, so we won't have an encounter there at all, but by moving the extra 2 additional movement, each of my characters take 2 light fatigue. So I'll throw 2 light fatigue into the Argonians cooldown track, and 2 light fatigue into the Dark Elves track. The encounter phase for day number 9 is skipped. We go right to the rewards phase. Now, I don't gain anything because I didn't do any kind of encounter during this day, but I do have XP banked that I can spend right now if I want to do advancements, essentially boosting things. But what I'm trying to do purposely is actually pay for the next cooldown stat increment, which is going to be 4. Both of my characters currently are holding 3 XP, so hopefully we can get that one additional one very soon that allow us to bump up to 4. And as we did not have a peaceful encounter during this day, we're going to go draw a top card off the peaceful encounter deck and find out what's happening for the weather going into the next day, and it's going to be flooding. That's certainly not going to be a good thing in terms of traveling, but that should be okay based on the fact we're only 1 space away from the city. Now, it's also worth mentioning that you can kind of get a rough idea as to what things might happen encounter-wise by taking a look at the card tray at any given time during gameplay. Anytime during gameplay, when you look at the card tray, you're going to see the title of the peaceful encounter and the conflict encounter to come, which can give you a little bit of a clue as to what potentially could happen. And the top of the peaceful encounter that I just revealed to determine what the weather was going to be said mysterious rain. So I had an inkling that rain would at least be occurring, and it actually ended up being worse. It ended up being flooding. And it's also worth mentioning, anytime that you check a peaceful encounter for the weather, you're always placing that card behind that deck yet again. It's not going to go into the discard pile. It only goes in the discard pile if you actually do what is written entirely on the card, the actual encounter in and of itself. So now we can do our adventure arrest, and I'm going to absolutely choose to get rid of these over fatigue cubes out of the track. And coming over here for the Dark Elf, we're going to take the Destruction Staff die back into the skill line, and we're going to take away 1 light fatigue. And that completes day number 9. We're moving on to day 10. A brand new day begins with flooding. Let's use our 1 baseland movement to get into the town of Alton. So we'll now take this overland map and move it off to the side and bring in the Gazetteer for the Black Marsh, finding the town we just moved into. A port town on the interior waterways of the Black Marsh, Alton Coromont is known for its distinctive landmark, a beach sailing vessel that serves a variety of social and business functions for the city's residents. The town is run by Captain One-Eyed, an Argonian pirate on the lookout for the next payday. It says there's an open contract here. As a free town action, an adventurer may discard an active side quest to gain 1 item from the shop. And I do actually have a side quest, which is literally 2 hexes to the east of where I'm currently located. So it's very accessible and potentially possible to head there and do this side quest. But on the other side of the equation, if what comes up in terms of different items here at this city look interesting, I might go after something there. Here's a look at the items inside the town. We have 3 common ones across the top and 3 legendary across the bottom. We have the Glyph of Transmutation, Pale Frost Elk, and Morag Tongue Braces. I'll show you these up close. For those that want to read each of the items, I'll go ahead and show them on screen here so you can do so. I'm going to be choosing between them, but there are certainly some cool options here. Now for the legendary items, this one's really calling to me because this is a very cool one in that you expend it before deploying enemies at the start of a clash. You place a Bane status die, which basically deals true damage to that enemy at the start of every one of their turns. You essentially put the status die in a numbered hex, knowing full well an enemy is going to show up there of a given chip value, and then that particular enemy is going to gain that horrible Bane conditioner status, which is great news for you during a clash. Now here's the thing. You'll remember earlier when we took a look and we reorganized the 3 conflict cards on the very top of the deck, and the top one right now is captured, and I know that that's a clash because I was able to take a look at things. So I know this one would actually benefit me if we got into a conflict and got captured. However, saying that, there's a number of cool options legendary-wise in this pile here. As an action on your turn, you can roll 1d6 and deal 1 true damage to different units in sight, up to a total you rolled. Unless you are a bard, the first unit you select must be yourself, so I would hurt myself in this situation, but the true damage that would be thrown out would be very beneficial. Now, if I roll a 4 or higher, the card gets discarded. So that's a situational thing, but that certainly will impact multiple individuals so long as you're within range of them. And last but not least, a nice benefit to ranged attacks. As an interrupt, when selecting a target, you can increase your range by how many tenacity you spend. Now, the town also has 3 trainers available, so I'll go inside the bag here and draw 3 out, and we'll see which ones come out. We got ourselves this one here, and this one here. Now to the 3, there is one we have not seen yet. That's the center one. The very top one is the Shadow skill line. This is the Acrobatics skill line. We actually have both of these in play with our characters currently. Nothing to say we couldn't gain them on the opposite characters if we wanted to. And then this one here, we have Restoring Light. Now that's a very interesting one and certainly would be a nice pairing for my Dark Elf. As you can see, Restoring Light is going to line up really nicely with the Magic Battle form, which is exactly what my Dark Elf typically sits inside of, allowing to do things like Purge, Hasty Prayer, Breath of Life, a lot of healing going on here, and that could certainly be helpful. Now, before I start taking any town actions, you'll remember I got this conflict completed, and it ended up turning into an item which the Dark Elf is holding on to. And as it states right here, as an item during a town encounter, you can discard this item to promote your class to Master or to take an additional town action. So if there was another town action in here I want to do beyond the 2 that I normally get, I could use this card to do so, or I could just say, forget that, I want to go from a Novice to a Master. Here's a look at the Novice side of the Sorcerer class, which my Dark Elf has, and I've used a number of these already during this playthrough, but if I flip it over to the Master side, things change for the better. Each of these things get a little bit more interesting now. So I'm now discarding the Zanmir Chart, which is this one right here, an item which was in my inventory for the Dark Elf, in order to go to the Master class. This does not cost a town action. I still have 2 town actions across both of my characters. And as you guys already know, because that was the primary reason we headed to this town, we are going to take a town action for both of my characters to head to the inn. And when we head to an inn, we're healed to a maximum HP. Also, we remove all light fatigue, over fatigue, and status dice from the cooldown tracks. And we also recover all exhausted and drained dice. So when you go to an inn and use it as an action, don't clear out your entire cooldown track. It will not bring back the dice that you use as part of your skills. It's only going to be fatigue dice, over fatigue dice, and status dice that are going to come out of the cooldown track. And of course, anything that's been drained and sitting on your character sheet is going to go back into the player board area. Now over here for the Dark Elf, I have to think about whether I want to actually take an action to remove all 4 fatigue. As we know, when we get to the end of this day, we'll be able to remove 2 dice. So I'll only have 2 left in there anyway. Is it worth it to spend a town action to essentially just get rid of 2 light fatigue a little bit early? I don't know if it is. I personally think that I'm a little bit more interested in that Restoring Light skill set. So we're going to go ahead and take that as an action training to add it into our dashboard. Now, you remember moments ago when I talked about the fact I can, as part of the town encounter, there's a little bit of a contract on it that says I can go ahead and discard any side quest I have in order to obtain an item from the pool of items. But the other option is to not discard this side quest because, based on what I pulled up here, this Ashen Blood is really good to throw on somebody, especially inside of a clash, when you're specifically targeting one individual. And that's because this side quest here states, based on it being tied to the Black Marsh as a side quest, it's going to bring an Argonian Marauder into the fray with a +5 HP. So I could literally place this Ashen Blood, or at least attempt to place it, because it'll be the first one placed furthest away, and make sure it has the Bane die on it, which means it'll be taking a true damage every single turn, which will likely help us in completing the battle objective, which is just to eliminate the Argonian Marauder. So actually, we're going to hold on to this side quest. And my Dark Elf is going to go shopping and steal that Ashen Blood and is going to place it in the inventory because, again, we just used a card out of the inventory for the Dark Elf, bringing the inventory down to a total of 3. Now it's back up to 4. Now, while inside the inventory for the Dark Elf, you'll see at the very bottom of the glyph of Potion Boost, it says, when any adventurer takes an inaction, discard this card. Unfortunately, because we took the inaction, we are going to lose this one, and it would have been nice to obtain this after we got the Ashen Blood, because we could have actually used this glyph in order to ensure the Ashen Blood comes back to use later on, which would be really huge. But unfortunately, this card's gone, so the inventory for the Dark Elf is reduced down to 3. Now, these cards are actually really cool overall. I've got one more town action to spend on the Argonian, and he's tempted to grab something here from the shop. Looking at what's going on here, the Pale Frost Elk allows you to essentially place HP instead of fatigue on the elk up to 4, and then the elk is discarded. So it's kind of a way to avoid taking fatigue into your cooldown track, which is pretty cool. And then this one here, we don't have any defense, and it actually would be a perfect pairing with the Argonian, who gets up close and personal for attacks. This one says after an adjacent enemy engages you, you deal a damage, and you get to ignore 2 defense from that enemy, which is huge. Now down here, the war drum is going to go after the true damage. As I mentioned, you roll a die, and it's based on the range around you, so it's more positional and maybe more situational, but still, true damage is true damage. And the range increase on this would be really nice, but I think the range increase is the least of my worries. I like these 3, I just don't know which one to grab. Now, as good as the Pale Frost Elk is, I do have the ability on this Sorcerer to use Power Surge, which allows me to clear dice from the left side of the Argonian's cooldown track. So I think I can kind of manage the fatigue that might throw on the Argonian, and I'm going to be trying not to add fatigue into the equation, but of course enemies and game effects might throw that at me. I think I'm actually leaning more towards the Tong Bracers, because being able to negate 2 defense when you put 1 damage straight on an enemy that engages you is going to be a nice benefit. The other reason the elk doesn't make much sense is because I have the Ancient Dragon Guard Burial Mask on the Argonian, and remember that one will actually deal damage when you spend 2 tenacity based on the number of fatigue that's inside your cooldown track. So in a way, fatigue on the Argonian is not a bad thing when the mask is currently in one of my 4 active inventory slots. That's going to do it for my town encounter. We now head to the rewards for day number 10. Now for the Dark Elf as part of the rewards phase, I was originally thinking of saving my XP until I had 4 to up my cooldown stat, because I want to be able to get more dice out of that cooldown track faster, but now that I've got the Restoring Light here as a skill, I'm very tempted to spend 2 XP to get 2 dice into these positions. As you can see on the skill sheet, Restoring Light has some really cool dice. It's got the Purge die that says it goes in the active slot up top. At any time, you can exhaust the die to remove 1 status die from a party member and then heal them from 1 HP. Pretty awesome. Hasty Prayer says it's an instant and you heal each adventurer for 2 HP. Great. And the Breath of Life at the very bottom is the coolest of all of them, because this one is an instant. You select an adventurer in range and then roll X, which basically just means roll the die. Whatever the X value is on the die is going to be how much HP that is going to go back to that individual. So that has the potential to also generate tenacity, and that's another reason why I want to get more dice for this individual, because the more tenacity I can generate from rolling dice, the better my master over here for the class abilities will start to make more sense during combat. In other words, if I'm rolling blanks here on these dice, even if I'm not getting the effects I want, I am charging up my tenacity quite aggressively, allowing me to use this class more effectively. So I'm spending 1 XP for the level 1 die Purge, and I'm going to spend another XP in order to pick up the Breath of Life die, which is level 2. So overall, a pretty good upgrade for the Dark Elf. For the Argonian, I'm going to choose to hold all the XP that I currently have, not spending any of it, as I'm trying to save up to 4 here on the cooldown track, I think, unless, of course, I get tempted by potentially a stat boost or a skill boost in the future. We now head into the end of day for day number 10. We're going to check out the peaceful encounter at the top of the deck to find out what's going to happen for the weather. And on the opposite side, we have sunny. And now for our Adventurer's Rest. Our Argonian wants to leave this die in the cooldown track because it does provide a nice defensive boost while it's in there. So we'll take these 2 dice out and put them back into the skill line. And on the opposite side for the Dark Elf, we're going to go ahead and remove 2 light fatigue. It's great to see those cooldown tracks almost completely empty. And we're now going to move into day number 11. For our new day phase, we'll go ahead and increment the day counter. And now we head to the Overland phase. And as we go into day number 11's Overland phase, we're going to stop the video right here, and I'm going to throw it back to you guys to let me know what we should do during this day. With sunny weather, we have an overland movement of 3 at a base. We can push ourselves up to 6, which means we'd each take 3 light fatigue. So we really can traverse quite far at this point, allowing us to get to either an encounter space that essentially is blank. We could get to an unstable encounter space, or maybe a conflict encounter, peaceful encounter, or we could go for that side quest, which is just 2 hexes to the southeast. Now, the only kicker with that is if we go there, we might come out a bit scathed, and if we do, we have to head directly to that Stormhold location, because it'll be day 12 as we traverse back there to try to accomplish it. So whatever happens in that clash for Mercs and Scales could be tough to swing running back up to the very top. Also, the distance could get us, because we have sunny weather right now, so we definitely can make it to this side quest at the moment, but you'll see it is 5 hexes to get back to to Stormhold to do our final one on day 12. So the kicker is we need to have sunny weather, and that's hard to guarantee. So even though when we were in town, I thought, hey, we might be able to go to the Clash here for the Mercs and Scales, and I shouldn't discard that side quest to pick up an additional item. I probably should have. Maybe I should have, because based on the movement to just get back to Stormhold, it doesn't look like a great idea, but we have options right now to go somewhere else. So where should we go? Let me know in the comments down below. Cannot wait to hear all the responses. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.